Good evening. Hi, my name is Stephanie Mayuri. Welcome. Tonight we are hosting Recognizing Anxiety and Depression in Young Children with Molly Pope. Um, I am Stephanie Mayuri. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Early Childhood. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you're here. It can be difficult to take time out of your schedule on a topic that maybe is difficult as thinking about young children with depression or anxiety. But don't worry, you're in good hands with Molly Pope. She's been along with us. Hi, Molly, all year long. This is our fifth parent program in a series called Pandemic Parenting Tools and Tips. So we've been so happy to serve such a wide community of parents near and far. And we're going to wrap it up tonight with a topic that we feel is really important. We hosted a similar session back in February for our educators that was really well received. And we thought it was just as important to deliver to parents during a time where this might be coming up more than normal. So Molly will help us understand this topic and give a lot of really practical tools and tips that you can use every day. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the supporters of the Alliance to help make our programming free and open to the public. We have gold sponsors. We have Winnetka Park District, Northwestern Center for Talent Development, Winnetka Community Nursery School, FAN, Gainsborough Law, and New Trier Township, Kenilworth Community Fund, and the schools of St. Joseph and St. Francis Xavier. So thank you to their support and thank you to all the community support. We're a nonprofit and we really depend on support from our community. So thank you so much. So Molly, thank you for being here. Thank you for wrapping up our series for us tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. And just everyone, before you log off tonight, we have a very quick survey that will help us plan our programming for next year. So if you could just take less than 5 minutes to fill it out, we really want to get the pulse of what's really needed. So, all right, Molly, it's all you. Thank you so much. Have a great night and I'll see you at the end.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get us started. Okay, so welcome. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening. If you're listening to this on the replay, welcome, welcome. Like Stephanie said, this has been part of something that the Alliance has done all year long while we're going through this pandemic, these tools and tips series. And tonight we're talking about just recognizing anxiety and depression in young children and getting a sense of what that might look like in your home and what you can do about it. So let's just get started here. Our goal is to really learn more about what anxiety and depression can look like in young children, and to stay curious and not panic when we see our children struggling, and really how to model resilience to support our kids. So with that, let's begin. Again, I am Molly Pope, and I have been working with children and families in classrooms for over 17 years, and most of those years have been as a school psychologist. I am also an infant and early childhood mental health consultant. I work with child cares and preschools in supporting the children that are there, the staff and the families, and I use a relationship lens to see what's coming up with behavior and how to make things smoother. I'm also a parent coach. I work one-on-one with families and we problem solve together so that they can manage the challenges that are coming up in their family with confidence and ease and grace. This year, I'm a teacher in person in a young twos classroom at Winnetka Public School Nursery. That has been a gift and a delight in my year. It has been so much fun. And I'm also a wife and a mom of two boys. My boys are now 11 and 14. So you will hear about them tonight as we talk about some experiences. And really, here's our overview. We are going to jump right into what are the signs of depression and anxiety in young children. We're going to talk about what are healthy struggles and what are unhealthy struggles, kind of where's that line. We are going to own our feelings that get stirred up by this topic because we all have them. Kind of makes us nervous, a little uncomfortable sometimes. And then I'm going to offer you some tools to ground you here in the pandemic as we're managing and beyond as we transition out into whatever the next phase will be. And then some specific strategies to support your child and really build resilience. So I just wanted to start here and preface by saying a little information is a dangerous thing. And that's really all that tonight is it's a little information. It's just a primer. The intent is to help you be thinking about what's underneath some of the behavior that you might see in your home. This is not intended to turn you into a mental health professional or to replace the guidance of a licensed mental health professional for your specific situation. This is really education and just meant to inform. So, depression and anxiety. And really, I keep saying young children. I'm talking about children who are 3 years old and up. When there is clinical depression or anxiety present in children younger than 3, the parent and the child are assessed and evaluated together. So we don't really see them as separate from the parent. But when they're 3, they are spending more time out of the home, or they have opportunities to be with caregivers other than their parents. And so we might be seeing more behavior that's just isolated within the child. So we're going to start talking about some, behavior in general. This is the underpinning of the whole conversation, right? That behavior is communication. And the bigger mystery here is, what are they telling us? So this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start talking about depression. And really, here's a list of behaviors, right? Or moods that can manifest as behaviors. So sadness or a low mood that doesn't go away. Being irritable or grumpy all the time, right? Sometimes the blues are not low, they're hot reds. A little Holly Golightly there. But not being interested in things that they used to enjoy. They can feel tired, lethargic a lot of the time. Sleep, having trouble sleeping or sleeping more than usual. Not being able to concentrate. So with kids, we're not expecting them to do taxes or anything that takes hard concentration. It's really in their play, right? Can they stay engaged in their play? Maybe interacting less with family and friends, so more withdrawn, being indecisive, and not having a lot of confidence. So in children, again, that translates to being more clingy. So if we're seeing these symptoms or a cluster of these symptoms for 2 or more weeks, we would want to check in with a professional. Well, then how do I find a professional, you might think? The first place to start is with your pediatrician. They've seen a lot of kids and they may have some helpful insight, and hopefully they have a relationship with you and with your child. So they have some gauge of what's normal for your kid. And then B, you always want to rule out any physical causes that could be there, and things that might not occur to you, to me as a non-doctor, and have those things ruled out. And a pediatrician can be the first step to getting them support with a therapist who works specifically with young children. So one thing when we're talking about depression, even in kids, and it's not on this list, is an expression of not wanting to live or to kill themselves. I said it. I know it's very uncomfortable to hear that. It's really not commonly found in early childhood. But since I know that we have parents on this call who have older children, I just wanted to address that directly. So what do you do if your kid says, "I wish I was dead"? The first thing is don't panic. Even just saying that, I feel like I need to model taking a breath. And the thing that you can say is really something that's empathetic, which would be something like, "I'm sorry that you feel so bad." And then you could ask some questions, right? What do you wish was better? If there's something you could change, what would that be? But to just kind of highlight, a child who says, "I wish I was dead," or "I wish I wasn't alive," it's not always accompanied with depressive symptoms, and it's not always coming from a place of depression. Children can often say this when they are really wanting to connect. They want to affirm that they are loved and they're lovable. And sometimes they're reaching out in a way that they know is sure to grab your attention. So you want to take notice, right? This is a need. This is a communication, right? A behavior that's a communication. And then you want to help them express their feelings in other ways. Sometimes it's a vocabulary issue. They don't have the right words. Um, Often with young children, they don't have a good sense of death and the permanence of that. So it's a little education about what would be a better thing to say when you're feeling so strongly that I could then know that you need some help from me. Um, but again, knowing that there's people on here with older kids, and I'm thinking like 10 and up. Another question when you're getting information from your child after this has come up is to just truly ask, do you have any thoughts about hurting yourself? Right? It's even uncomfortable for me to say it, but that is something that is recommended. It used to be like, oh no, that's going to plant seeds in their heads. And that truly isn't what the research says, that it's a relief if the child truly does have some thoughts about that, to hear someone say it and that they can then unload their burden of their fear. So, and if it feels overwhelming for you as a parent, then that's another time to reach out and get help. And again, a pediatrician is a good place to start. So when we're talking about depression, and I know this is a tough place to kick off, I promise it's going to get a little bit lighter and a little bit better as we go. But sadness is normal. And even my little joke there is a little bit of a reflection of how hard this can be to talk about. And sadness is a part of daily life. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your child has significant depression. So I just wanted to share this, that there are a lot of books out there for children around anxiety, but not a lot around sadness. And I think a lot of us adults, we stay away talking about sadness and depression, in part because we're afraid of the power of suggestion. And then what? What do you do when you have a sad or a morose or a melancholy child? That's not the image of childhood that we hold. So this book is by a Dutch author, and it's just lovely. It has a companion book too that's about happiness. And I just bring it up because I love the suggestion that if we can accept sadness as normal, then we should be able to talk about it and make some space for it when it shows up. Treat it as a temporary guest who will continue to visit us over the course of our life. So starting in childhood is an okay place to start talking about how sadness sometimes comes. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit and talk about anxiety. And I just want to remind you, how are we going to know we're seeing anxiety? We're going to see behavior. So changes in behavior are common indicators of anxiety in young children. And here listed are some of the clues that you would see. Again, sleep is a big indicator. Not sleeping, having trouble falling asleep, having some fears around sleep, appetite changes, not eating a lot, being a little more picky, wanting to have some more control around their eating, and then some attitude shifts, needing to be reassured, asking lots of questions, having trouble engaging, being disruptive, and then tantrums and aggression. And then a big one too is avoidance. So I said aggression. Anger and aggression are often the language of anxiety and depression. This is true in adults, but even more so in children. So it kind of goes counter to what our natural response is. When a kid is angry or aggressive, we're going to shut that down. That's not how you behave. Enough of that. But if we understand, and if we see it really as a clue that something else could be going on that's making this behavior come about, and get curious, we might find that there's some anxiety underneath. And then anxiety can look like questions. I'm just going to say, I am an Instagram person. I get a lot of my information off people I follow on Instagram, like this site here. So I put her address there. She's a social worker who has great things on kids. And she had this great post. So think about this. Think about when your child has been, super kind of naggy with the questions. And they might repeat the same question, like, I just answered this. Now you're asking again. It's a way to gain some control and to soothe the anxiety of the unknown, right? We do it as adults as well. Another thing when we're talking about anxiety is sensory. So I made this very simple, here's my graphic skills, simple Venn diagram to say that sensory and anxiety overlap. And this whole idea of sensory, when you become a parent, you get to become familiar that children have sensory systems, and some parts of the system can be sensitive, like your child might freak out around loud noises, which impact, right, their auditory system. And some parts of the system could be seeking input, like they need more, like they might roll in the sand at the beach and they don't care when they get sand in their socks and shoes and down their pants, or they really like the wet, oozy paint to come out between their fingers. So this whole awareness in us parents kind of starts to develop as we learn about our children. So the sensory system really has this interplay with anxiety. Certain sensory experiences can trigger anxiety. So like loud noises, like the public automatic flushing of the toilets, right? Or loud barking dogs, or a creepy image on a movie or a show that can be visually overwhelming, or certain foods that have a texture that's off-putting. Those are all sensory experiences that can then create anxiety for the child of when is it going to happen again. The other part about sensory and anxiety is that we often need to use sensory strategies to soothe the anxiety. So we'll talk about this a little bit more, but just something to keep in mind when we're getting curious about this. Okay, so I said we're going to talk about what's healthy, what's not healthy, and really where is that line? So stress is a part of life, and so is anxiety. Both are normal, and both children and adults experience them. And we're just going to talk about what the difference is. So one way to think about it is that stress is external and anxiety is internal. So stress triggers anxiety symptoms. Stress is a response to something that happened outside ourselves. There can be physiological stressors, like those sensory stressors, especially for children who get overstimulated. And a physiological stressor could be also a lack of sleep, or a lack of physical activity. And you can have social stressors. You could have physical stressors like illness or injury. Anxiety, on the other hand, continues after that initial cause or event. So it shows up as worry, fear, nervousness, or a phobia. So an example of a child who doesn't like those automatic loud flushers in the toilets at public restrooms, right? It's sensory overwhelm for him. And then they cause some anxiety that could look like a tantrum or real fight or flight behavior as you're trying to get your kid to come into the bathroom with you the next time you're in public. And the toilet flushing is the stressor. It causes a sensory stressor to the sensory system, but the fear and the panic about it happening again, that's the anxiety. So just one way to kind of think about the event and the anxiety that happens and continues after. But when we think about it, young children are introduced to new stressors all the time. And this gets us thinking about healthy struggles and unhealthy struggles. These stressors are typically okay for most children. And by managing these stressors, children develop some resilience and some flexibility and some coping skills, all of which can grow to be generalized the next time they're faced with a stressor. So remember that time when we thought Miss Kathy was going to be at class, but she was out sick and she wasn't there? Yeah, but then she came back. I bet that's going to be just like, this time's going to be just like that. And you did okay. It was actually kind of a fun day with the new teacher. So you want to connect those positive experiences so that they feel competent and capable when another stressor gets put in their path. Let's talk a little bit about what stress behavior would look like, right? Because that's how we're knowing what's happening, is in their behavior. So again, a great Instagram grab from me here. What does stress look like? It doesn't look that different from what stress looks like in us, right? We feel isolated. They have some clinginess. When we're irritable, they might be showing some tantrums and meltdowns. These kind of behaviors, it's really temporary. It's triggered by the stress in your life, and they're short-lived. But there are points where stress can become unhealthy. And really, this is a list of what unhealthy stressors look like. And we call this trauma. So obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. There are more things that are not on here and that aren't always life-threatening, such as a car accident or a dog bite, things that are short-term, one-time event that can still have lingering effects like a phobia. And really, sometimes you say, wow, my trauma's not that bad. And for a while in the literature, they would talk about big T trauma and little t trauma. But it's really not our job to judge or rank trauma. When we think about our experience here in the pandemic, this pandemic and a lot of the things that are happening as a cause of it is causing trauma, and how people manage similar trauma events in very different ways. So it's really about how is it impacting you and your family, and what do you need to get better, to feel better. So that's just my little note about you don't need to judge or rank or justify your trauma. So stress, anxiety, sadness, they're a part of life. And there's going to be times where you might need more support. When that stress is chronic, when it turns into, or it is trauma, or when the person has poor coping strategies. So you've heard me say it a couple times here, but phobias. So let's just talk about that a little bit, because kids can have phobias about anything. Bees, dogs, needles, bridges, darkness, heights, loud noises, vomit, vacuums, clowns, ET. That was one I learned just the other night. So, and research suggests that about 9% of children and adolescents experience phobias, and the number's probably higher if you looked at, smaller, less significant phobias that people can work through but still hold. And what happens when a phobia is present is that the child's fight or flight response overactivates. And so there's this exaggerated sense of fear and of danger. So what do you do? What do you do when your child is so scared of bees, he doesn't want to walk out the front door? So the first is to calm yourself and help calm your child by communicating how they're going to be safe. And you get them through that moment. Afterwards, you want to revisit and find out what was their mind telling them. Children have pretty unrealistic ideas about what will happen, and it's your job to gently correct those misconceptions. So I work one-on-one with a family, and their daughter had a really big phobia about the fire alarm at school. And when they finally kind of talked to her about it, she's 4, and she thought that fire was going to spew out of the fire alarm. And so again, those misconceptions, that was what her mind was telling her. So of course she's panicked. She's really fearful. And so if your child though is young and doesn't have a lot of language, How do you know what their mind is telling them? And in that case, I say, make your best guess, right? So, from a place of empathy, you want to provide an assurance of safety. So, you're really worried about that fire alarm. I saw your eyes get really big and you hid in the closet. Yeah, the fire alarm can't hurt us though. Yeah, it just goes beep, 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 right? And I'm here to keep you safe. There's no fires, and we can keep playing, and I'll be here to keep you safe. So, making your best guess is kind of the best you can do. And you want to read their body language and kind of reflect that back to them. I saw you, you hung on to my leg really tight, right? You were really scared something bad was going to happen. But let me tell you, I'm here. So, safety is really what you're working to import on them. The other thing about phobias is you don't want to avoid the situation. You're really working towards exposure and practice. I have another family that I work with. I keep mentioning the automatic toilet flushers. Well, that was his issue, their little boy. And and hasn't been that much of an issue because families aren't going out that much in public, but they were going to be traveling in an airport and weren't sure if he was going to be able to use the toilet. So what they did before their trip was they started to become investigators. And they said, okay, we're going to go to some of the public bathrooms at Home Depot and at the grocery store, and we're going to make a bet. Is it an automatic flusher or is it a regular flusher? We're just going to go in and look. And really, what you're doing is you're giving a kid another chance for an exposure with really limited risk, right? He's not being asked to use the toilet. He's just going in to look. And then he can have some confidence and feel like he accomplished something by being that investigator. And you're just getting him closer and closer and growing his comfort. So the last thing on there is you just want to check yourself that you're not adding to your child's fear, that you're really supporting their sense of confidence so that when they do something that was a little bit brave, to really name it as that. Look at you, you did that. And that you're not saying things like, oh my gosh, that big doggy almost got you, right? not helping. So being self-aware is important when we're looking at phobias too. So this came up recently too as a question to me. Molly, here we are, we're washing our hands all the time. What are our kids going to do about, germaphobia? Is that going to be an issue that we have to tackle? So we are asking our kids to take a lot of smart precautions now as we live through a pandemic, such as washing their hands a lot, wearing their masks. But most children are going to be able to go back to whatever norms and rules that you had prior to the pandemic. But for some children, those who are strict rule followers, perfectionists, kids who are a little anxious, or kids that are just so young, like the kids I work with, that they don't remember any other reality. These habits may need a little help to get reshaped. So if a child does express, a concern like I have to wash my hands, I, can't share this with Billy, I don't want to take this, over to someone's house, you want to find out what is their mind telling them and kind of gently exploring with them, what could be the worst that could happen? Well, if they're thinking they're going to die, then yeah, that's right, they're going to be scared. So you want to gently correct those misconceptions and then address their concerns and focus on safety. And I think part of, again, the last one is you need to check yourself that you're not adding your own fears to the situation, that you are really, although not everything can be known in this pandemic, right? Are we going to be living with risk after, the states lift all their bans? Yeah, we are. So nothing is 100%. But for our children, they need to know that we feel assured enough to keep them safe. And we can provide that for them. So in general, when kids avoid what they're afraid of, they really miss out on an opportunity to see if they can handle it. And we enable this often. We're like, well, let's not push her. This is just going to really upset her. She doesn't have to go this time. But it really takes practice to build up resilience. So maybe, going to the thing that is anxiety producing. But again, like my little guy that was the investigator with the bathroom, maybe you go and it's modified how much you have to participate, is better than skipping it all together. So something just to keep in mind. Okay. So we're going to talk about us a little bit and what all this talk of feelings and anxiety and depression in our kids, what does it mean for us? Why is it hard to talk about? Some feelings make us uncomfortable, and it's different for each of us. If you think about your partner or a family member, they might be just fine with anxiety, but it sends you over the edge. They might have a hard time with aggression, but how to handle it, and it doesn't really push your buttons. We're all different. And what you need to realize and accept is that you are not a blank slate. We all have biases and different comfort levels with different emotions and behaviors. We have areas that we judge and areas where it's easier for us to find compassion for children. And we all have buttons that get pushed. So here's 3 kids, 2 on the left, 1 on the right. And just take a look. It's very possible that one of these kids pushes your button or makes you a little uncomfortable, while the other children do not. And they might even stir empathy. But again, it's probably different for all of us. When your buttons get pushed, you're less likely to explore with empathy and curiosity as to what's going on, right? What is this behavior communicating to us? If seeing that sad child on the right makes you a little nervous, I don't know, he needs to cheer up, I'm not sure. You've kind of lost your curiosity lens. And typically we would go immediately to fixing, correcting, or just straight up impatience. Come on, that's enough of that. Cheer up, we got this, let's go. So when we see our child struggle or act out, and we're not in that present, curious, empathic state, we're in one of these 3 states. The past, your experience either as a parent or as a child yourself can really influence how, what buttons you push and where you go mentally when you're witnessing some behavior of a child. They can remind us of our own family or ourselves. Oh my God, I was just like that around dogs when I was little. I passed this on to him. Or she's so stubborn, she's just like me. Or he's just like my brother. Or that's something my mother would do. And while genetics are a thing, we need to be careful that we aren't viewing our child through a lens that clouds our vision and prevents us from seeing them for them. They are their own little person. They are in a different family from you, your brother, your mother, and we need to remember that history is not destiny. There's other times where we see behavior and we're in the present and we immediately go into control mode, or we're going to brush through it. It's okay. Let's just get going. No, don't worry about it. Let's just go. Right? And then sometimes our response to our child's behavior is fueled by our fears based in the future. What if this keeps happening? What if he keeps punching kids? Is he going to be the bully in the class? Oh my gosh. Then what? What am I going to do? So it just brings me to just make us think about, how's your anxiety? Because it's really hard to support your child's anxiety if it makes you anxious and you're not conscious of your anxiety and you're not working on it in a self-aware way. So what do you do when you're getting anxious? Molly, what do we do? So when a worry's got you, these are just some, in general, good, solid cognitive behavioral strategies. Ask yourself, is this thought serving me, right? Is there another way I could think about this? You could share your worry with a friend, phone a friend, and let them know. Say it out loud. Say your worst fear out loud. I am worrying about X. And if X did happen, what's the worst that could happen? Where does your brain go, right? That's important for someone who's supporting you and loving you to know that that's what you're holding. And once you kind of name it, right? I say this a lot, we have to name it to tame it. Whew, it doesn't have so much power. So that's one way of how do we cope with our own anxiety. Those are some mind, right? Methods of the mind. But when we are nervous and anxious, calm is less about the brain, right? That's when we are able to engage at that level. Like, what's another way I could think about this? We're already a little bit calm. The first thing that we need to address is our body. So your nervous system, how do you regulate, right? How do you take breaths? And this is where sensory and anxiety overlap. And it's how you're going to take care of yourself. The other way to calm yourself, to calm your body, is to tune into your inner voice. How do you talk to yourself in those moments when you think, oh my God, my children will never get along and they will be 60 years old fighting over who gets by China and they will never love each other the way they should, right? You go straight into the future. So how do you talk to yourself in those moments to replace that awful tape loop? This is really hard. I'm a good parent. I'm doing my best in a tough situation. We need to talk ourselves the way that we would talk to a dear friend who is struggling. And I've said it before, but in these times, I am sure you have been there being that friend to someone because there's plenty of people out there struggling. So that's really where how you want to talk to yourself as a way to calm your body and kind of soothe your system. So, tools to support you and your family, both in this pandemic, right? We're still in it, still going strong, and beyond. And here's the secret. You are the best intervention when you provide your calm, predictable, confident energy, right? Your relationship with your child, your partner's relationship with your child, those are the interventions that really support children when they're struggling. Relationship. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Okay, Molly, so what does that look like? What do we do? So I often talk about connection. Connection, you know it when you feel it. You know it when you have a good moment with your kid. But often these are the ingredients. You're slowing down, right? Slowing down also requires some presence. So distractions are out of the way. But slowing down and getting rid of any urgency. I got to fix this right now. Oh my God, we got to get in the car. We got to go. Slowing down. Touch, right? Hugs, back scratches, hand holding, kisses, touch, play, and playfulness. I'll say it now, I'll say it again. Giggles are the best release for anxiety. And I'm going to caution, not tickles. Tickles can feel like you don't have a lot of control and it can feel annoying, although it can produce giggles. But, catch games where you're the monster, but you're a really clumsy monster, so you never quite get them, right? Playfulness. So you are the best intervention, but you also need to take care of your mental health. And I will say that it's not just for you, and it's not just so that you can be a good parent, but because you deserve to feel better. So if you're listening or watching and you are struggling with either some anxiety or depression, I really encourage you to take care of yourself. And it is really common to be struggling with mental health issues right now. And that could be things like obsessive thinking, lack of engagement and connectedness with your people, caring less about things that were important to you, constant irritability. So ask yourself if you could use some help to make a change. This pandemic has impacted most people's functioning to varying degrees. And as the world opens up, it's not going to be a light switch, right? It's going to continue to be a challenging place to navigate. After the event, right, if we're calling this is a worldwide trauma to some extent. It's after the event that many of us who have been holding on tend to come apart. So even if you've been doing fine all along, but you're feeling like, I'm not sure about these next things over the next few months, it's a good time to get some support. And mental health services are very accessible right now through telehealth options. And so I have two suggestions if you're like, I don't know where to go. You can use an online service, right? BetterHelp is a really popular one that's known. And there's another one out there called Array. And that's where you would meet with a counselor online, and they would find and match one for you. Or you can use Psychology Today as a tool, and you can put in your town and you can put in your insurance and scroll and find a counselor or therapist on your own. And it could be someone who's local so that when things opened up, you could meet with them in person. Because moods are contagious. Anxiety is contagious, but so is calm. So look at this picture. I love this picture. One way that we are the intervention with our children is that we help co-regulate them. So this is more body, less brain. Stop talking and breathe with someone, humming. It wasn't until I really got into my graduate studies that I realized what a genius my own mother was. She had this repetitive hum that she would rock and soothe us. And it was just this tuneless hum. And I did it with my boys because it was kind of what I associated with comfort, right? So all those things, rocking, humming, stroking, petting, slowing down. That's how we co-regulate with someone who is tantruming, upset, dysregulated. Be the golden retriever, right? So this is my little munchkin having breakfast in our little breakfast nook at our house. So let's talk about a day in the life. You being well rested and having gotten some time in the morning before your children wake allows you to be available, present, and lower stress. It's not always possible, but it does help. And how we greet them matters too. Questions are super tempting, right? Did you have a good sleep? Are you ready for the day? Are you excited about school? And it's not bad, but sometimes it's too early for that. And simple statements like these help connect us, and the recipient doesn't have to do anything other than just be. And if you have an early riser who's chatty or an anxious person who's looking for answers about the day and you're not ready to start the day, you can greet them with one of these and say, oh, that's a great question. I don't have an answer right now. I'll let you know after I have some breakfast, or we can think about it together after I have some coffee. Thank you for letting me know. You're going to a little boundary there. But even when you're on low functioning, these kinds of phrases, I'm so happy to see you, really start off your day with connection. Predictability and routines. As a parent, you are the captain of the ship and you set the course for your days usually. Predictability and routines help kids feel safe and secure. Right? Safe and secure is the opposite of anxious and depressed. So unexpected changes in schedules, though, they can bring out anxiety in a well-balanced kid, or they can be a big bummer and invite some of that sadness into our day or our life, right? If a party gets canceled, for example. So kids can get thrown by these changes, and you could see some of those behaviors listed in the beginning, asking lots of questions, being less flexible, being unmotivated, but that's life. Things come up, right? You're going to be late. You're going to have a substitute teacher. The party got canceled. We forgot the soccer cleats. First thing, you're going to take a breath, because this probably isn't an emergency when our routines and plans get flip-flopped around. It might feel like urgency as well, but again, it probably isn't truly urgent. So these are moments where you're teaching and modeling flexibility and resilience. And also that change isn't always negative. It's just different. So you want to name it that way. Like, wow, this was a surprise. This is unexpected. This is different. And you're really modeling that this is neutral. We don't know. Like, this isn't inherently bad just because it's different. The other thing I have on there is connection. So, right? So, slow down. Remember how powerful a caring touch is. Aim for some playfulness in your problem solving. And then you practice flexibility and resilience. The mentality is we can make it work, right? A little Tim Gunn Project Runway, make it work. When my kids were young, Bob the Builder was still really popular. And the phrase there was, can we do it? Yes, we can. And you're saying by having that attitude and mentality, this is going to be okay. You want them to see that you are giving this issue your stamp of approval. It's going to be okay. And you can also let them know that this is temporary. This is just for now, because kids don't have a good sign of permanence. Their temporal sense is a little bit skewed. And then a reminder of their resilience. You've done something like this before. I know you've got this. I believe in you. And you might be getting, no, I can't. I know it's hard. I believe in you. I'm excited for you. It's going to be good. Let's just find out, right? And invite them into your curiosity, even if inside you're like, oh my God, he's going to freak out when he sees. You're going to keep your anxiety down and promote openness, curiosity, and resilience. Do they have a character that they can embody, right? That's some of the work. Who is, I think, Susan Cain, Amy, I forget who it was. Some author, psychologist author saying doing the Wonder Woman stance, for 2 minutes in the mirror before you go in for a job interview really has like statistical impact on your chances of getting the job. It's something you can do with kids, right? My kid was really into the Hulk, and then he got into the Rock. So we do a lot of like before we, go into something that's going to take some resilience. And really all that is some playfulness, right? Yeah, I have time. I'll just tell this silly story about changes and resilience. When my son was 3, he wet his pants just as we sat down for lunch, him and I, at Goose Island Brewery downtown in Chicago, North Avenue. It was pouring rain. We had just ordered food. So I was in that like, oh my gosh, the food's coming. We can't just leave. The booth was covered in a puddle of urine, and I didn't have a change of clothes. I was also hungry. So if you've heard me before talk about the acronym HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I was definitely hungry, and I did not have a lot of bandwidth to manage this. Well, so the nice young waitress comes over to help us clean the booth, and I'm just wondering, what am I going to do if he's dripping wet? And she says, oh, I have some clothes I was going to give away to Goodwill in my car. I think I have a pair of pajama pants that might fit him. So bless her 22-year-old heart that she thought a pair of her pajama pants were going to fit my 3-year-old. But we made them work. And we rolled up the cuffs of those pajama pants 12 times, and we used a rubber band from the bar to get the waist on there. And he was kind of happy as a clam. It was such an odd thing to be wearing someone else's pants. And we made it work, right? And it was kind of funny. And it was a story that he held on to for a long time of kind of when things go sideways. And that's the last tool that I have there is storytell. The gift of these events is that it allows us to add to ours and our child's experience bank that you're going to pull on later. You want to tell that silly story to grandma and to auntie. And then we put on the pajama pants, tell it to the babysitter. And the moral of the story that you're crafting around this event is that it wasn't a big deal, and he did great anyway. Or He can handle anything. Look at him. You want to kind of let this be normal, that some days are wackadoodle. Name them something. Oh, it's a wackadoodle day. But telling that narrative cements that experience. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, parenting experts, they talk about that in their Whole Brain Child book about storytelling. Connection. I just had that in there again, just to remind us. At the end of the day is another important time where we really want to think about how are we soothing and connecting our children. You're putting a bow on the end of the day, whether it was good or bad. And there's a really common to have fears around the dark, around separation. And on some level, kids can be aware of their mortality when it comes to bedtime. So you want to have a routine. A routine has 3 to 5 steps, right? Brush teeth, go potty, put on PJs, read a book, sing a song, or a hug and a kiss. And in that routine, you want to have in a ritual that connects you. So Eskimo kisses and saying, see you soon, raccoon. Or I used to do, I love you from your head to your toes. And I would grab each one. My husband would always say to our early riser, see you at 6, because he would wake up at 6 without an alarm clock. And the little one would go, see you at 6, Dad. And that was their connection. So all those things kind of are a touchstone for your child, like, right, nice and consistent. Some kids find that their worries rise up at their bedtime. Bedtime is not the time for big conversations or asks. So I'll give you some examples on how you want to redirect. Sometimes a child genuinely shares a big wonder or a worry as they relax for bed, like, where do we go when we die? And like most big questions from young children, you only want to give them the information that they're looking for. So getting some context is helpful. Like, what made you think of that right now? Or you can turn it back on them to see how much they know. And then you can fill in some of their gaps. Like, where do you think we go? Sometimes with a slightly older child, they're knowingly asking a question that will extend their time with you, or they're giving their last ditch pitch about, can they get that certain toy? And you can hold a boundary and say, I hear that this is important to you, and we can talk about this in the morning. I'm going to remember in the morning. And then you want to make sure that you have that connection and kind of close on that note with them. And then as we kind of went through the scope of the day, it's important to remember this. Kids are allowed to have a bad day. Sometimes we're working on stuff and we're like, oh, and now it's an issue. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a bad day. I have that quote down there because we would always remember that when I worked in a school, that you think by age 7, by 2nd grade, they should be doing things and really on it. But developmentally, let's just remember, it's pretty common for kids to fall out of their chair, even at age 7. Okay, so I'm going to just go through these some quick strategies that are good at building strength and resilience in our kids. Pictures and visuals. I love pictures and visuals. I'm a big fan. Really helps young children learn and really understand what's happening. We create mental pictures in our mind to kind of help us prepare for something. Like, we use our past experiences and we kind of build that mental picture so we know how we think they're going to go. But kids are often experiencing something for the first time, and they don't have any previous experience to draw from. So I remember my son at age 3.5 getting in the taxi to go to the airport, and he thought he was on the plane, and he kept looking out the window and going, where are the wings? Where are the wings? Well, that poor baby. We forgot to tell him that first you have to get to the airport before you get on the plane, right? So that's my little example on the left there, a little story that you might make for a child who is traveling on a plane for the first time. What is that going to be like? There are many steps, but we just talk about we're going on a plane, but there's about 7 steps before that actually happens. So turning that into a little story, Here they've used digital pictures, but you could just do some stick figures with a Sharpie to tell that story. On the other side there on the right, that is one of our bedtime routines that we had, really not using that many words, but using some pictures. It's also laminated because my child slept with that and loved his bedtime schedule. So you can see kind of what our 3 to 5 step routine was. And I plan to give a workshop for parents next month on the how, the why, the when to use visuals. So you'll want to follow me on social media to have a clue as to when that's going to happen. Name your worry, right? So what's his name? It sounds like all your worry is talking. I wonder what your worry's name would be. I asked this of my child, and immediately he goes, Winston. It's Winston, Winston the Worrier. So you could draw a picture. You could give it a voice. Does he talk like this? Does he talk like this? And then can you make it a little silly? And part of that is kind of a childized version of we are not our feelings, right? If we're feeling angry and we say, I am angry, you're in it. You want to have a little distance from your feelings. You can say, I'm feeling angry. I'm still Molly. And you can look at it and have a little bit more insight into what's making you angry. The same thing for kids. You are not your worry. Your worry is something that exists within you. Elevator breathing, right? All this talk about sensory strategies. The biggest one we want our kids to know about is how to breathe. A lot of kids don't really know how to breathe, right? To be able to breathe into your belly. So this little girl has a little beanie baby on her belly. And this is one of the best ways to get young kids aware of their breathing is as they're laying on their back and they're taking breaths, and you're make your guy have a little ride on the elevator. Can he go up and down? This is something really easy to do at bedtime. Let's do 3 elevator rides, right? Once you've done it in a non-urgent situation, then you can call on that skill when it really would be helpful. The other thing is language, right? For all of us, when we're feeling challenged and someone's like, well, how was it? Well, what happened? I don't want to talk about it. I can at least say that if I'm of sound mind, but kids don't have that skill typically. So if they're dealing with something or kind of post experience, you want to get feedback. How did it go? Giving them some options and having this be kind of normal in your family. Just asking for thumbs up, sideways, down, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. 10 was, oh my gosh, worst thing of my life. 1 was, it was really fun. What was your favorite part? What was your worst part, right? Our kids are going to be having a lot of new experiences as pandemic things shift. And these are just some good touchstones that don't require a lot of language, but that give you some information. And then this was just the last thing I threw in here, bibliotherapy. What is on your bookshelf at home? What's bibliotherapy? It's a way to use literature to support good mental health. So books can highlight character traits and values that we want to promote. And I'm just talking general kids literature. The kids literature that's out there is wide, vast, and a lot of it is fantastic. It can demonstrate characters who have courage, flexibility, emotional regulation, trying new things, right? They can also normalize experiences. Alexander and the very bad, no good, terrible day. Yeah, I get that. I feel that. So think about what's on your bookshelf. Is there a gap? Are there some books you think your family could really use? So we've come to the end. Just as a quick review, kind of what did we cover tonight? So we talked about signs of anxiety and depression, and really behavior is communication. So look for changes: mood, clinginess, aggression, sleep, appetite, body complaints, and remembering that anger is often the language of depression and anxiety. And that for most children, anxiety and sadness are temporary. And really, kids who experience trauma, that's who's more likely to be developing clinical anxiety and depression that would really need treatment. Stress is normal, right? And we're learning to cope with both anxiety and the thing that gives them the anxiety is important for children to experience. Avoidance isn't helpful. We talked about ourselves, that we are not blank slates. We come into these situations with our own judgments and misgivings and buttons that get pushed from our past. And so it's important for adults to manage their own anxiety and have some self-awareness so that they can help their children. And then this is my surprise. You are the best intervention. Taking care of your own mental health is important for your children, but it's also important for you. And co-regulation, seeking connection in the day and having routines while also coaching kids to be flexible and resilient is going to be key. And then strategies for your children. I talked about pictures and helping your child name their worry, some elevator breathing to build that skill of breath, to be okay with less language and have some other tools to communicate, and looking at books as a way to help teach valuable lessons to kids. So to end, you got all this information. It's like, okay, got my little project at home. I'm going to tackle this thing. So sometimes when we see our kids as something that needs to be fixed, right, it can change the tone a little bit. So Mr. Rogers, I leave this with you. This is part of his song that I hope is familiar to a lot of you. And I just want to gently remind us that we are the ones who get to love them just the way they are, quirks and all. So let's see if I can get through this without tearing up. It's you I like, every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like, it's you yourself, it's you I like. So pardon me as I choke up with Mr. Rogers. Thank you so much for coming. I hope that you found this helpful. And I'll just put up here, there are the ways that you can reach me. If you have something going on that you just need some questions to answer, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is there. And thank you so much to the Alliance for having me. This was great.
Thank you, Molly. That was so cute the way you ended that. Thank you for your expertise and all of the really easy to implement strategies. I just want to remind everyone that we will be sharing this recorded session with your friends. This is free and open to the public, and we want to get it in as many hands as we can. So Molly, thank you for a great year of support during a time where it was very needed. And thank you for meeting us where we're at and just flexing with us all year long. So thank you all for being here. We are cheering you on. We hope you have a bright and happy summer. We are already planning for next year. So please let us know what you need. The survey is coming your way right now. So have a great evening and thank you and be well.